Welcome back, college brewers. It's time for step 3, fermentation. You may have brewed the wort, but the yeast makes the beer. Over the next 2 weeks, the yeast is going to do all the work. Fermentation is the metabolic process by which yeast converts sugars into ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. Our primary focus is to keep all the alcohol and to get rid of the CO2 that's produced. We do this by allowing the excess CO2 to escape through the airlock at the top of the fermenter. The yeast will continue to convert sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide until it can no longer do its job. But there are a few things you can do to ensure a good fermentation. The first factor for a good fermentation is aeration. Remember when you shook the fermenter? This infused the wort with the oxygen it needs to reproduce. The second factor is proper storage. During the fermentation process, you'll need to find a spot to store the fermenter that won't be disturbed, is out of direct sunlight, and stays at a constant temperature between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Like every animal, the goal of life for the yeast is to reproduce. Yeast reproduces asexually by budding, where the daughter cell splits off from the parent cell. The fermentation of wort into beer is a complicated biochemical process. The entire fermentation process has 3 phases: lag time, or adaptation phase, attenuation, or primary phase, and conditioning, or secondary phase. The amount of time between pitching the yeast and the first signs of fermentation is referred to as lag time. During this phase, the yeast undergo a period of high growth through aerobic reproduction. When all the oxygen is used up, the yeast will switch their metabolic process. This is the start of phase 2, attenuation, which is the part we really care about. Now the yeast will begin converting fermentable sugars into alcohol and CO2. The more yeast that were produced during the first phase, the more efficiently the yeast will transform the wort into beer. Although the bulk of fermentation is done after the first few days, the fermentation still needs to go through its conditioning phase. At the end of 2 weeks, the wort has completed fermenting and is ready to be bottled.